Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record this 2021 Time Magazine article titled How a White Supremacist Militia Uses Facebook to Radicalize and Train New Members about the Ukrainian neo-Nazi Azov Battalion.
Without objections ordered.
Thank you. Time also put together a piece only 3 years ago, and it's quite an extensive video that gives full information about the Nazis in Ukraine and their recruitment efforts that go all around the world. It's amazing to me that just in a few years' time, it's now considered misinformation to talk about the Nazis in Ukraine. I'd like to quote the article. It says that Ali Sufan, a security consultant and former FBI agent who has studied Azov Nazis, estimates that more than 17,000 foreign fighters have come to Ukraine over the past 6 years from 50 countries. According to Christopher Wray, the FBI director, he said that Azov has been recruiting and radicalizing and training American citizens for years. He also finished saying in his testimony to the U.S. Senate that American white supremacists are actually traveling overseas to train. This is an extremely concerning situation. I don't think anyone in the United States government, Americans, do not support actual Nazis or white supremacists. I know I certainly do not. And I can't understand why in just a short amount of time, this information that our own American media frequently talked about is no longer talked about. I'd like to point out also, here's an NBC article stating that Ukraine's Nazi problem is real. Mr. Snyder, do you see this headline? This is NBC News. They say that Ukraine's Nazi problem is real, even if Putin's denazification claim is not. So even our own American media, unless you consider NBC or Time Magazine misinformation spreaders or disinformation media outlets, this is contrary to what you testified. And there's frequent pictures all over. Anybody can find them of Nazis. Here they are. This looks like something you'd see out of Hitler's Germany from Ukraine. And this is something that's extremely important to talk about. According to the Council of Europe, however, Ukraine is ranked well in the top half of countries in terms of how corrupt they are. In the last 5 years, Ukraine is ranked close to the countries like Gambia, Iran, Myanmar, and Sierra Leone in corruption. That's not very free and democratic company to keep. Ukraine has canceled their elections, arrested members of the press, not allowed different types of religion unless it goes along with the Ukrainian government. And right now, the biggest push in Washington, D.C. is to fund the Ukraine war with another $60 billion. And while we're talking about the CCP, I think it's extremely important to point out that our own wide open border is the most dangerous threat to our national security. According to CBP data, there have been 24,296 Chinese nationals enter the United States at the southern border just this year in 2024. I want you to know that's up 7,000% since Biden took office in 2021, when only 342 Chinese nationals crossed our border. When we're talking about national security and talking about threats through the United States, Congress needs to remember that our open border is the greatest threat to the American people who, by the way, Monday was tax day, April 15th, when struggling Americans pulled together to pay their taxes or filed for extensions or paid money that they just didn't have and desperately are hoping for a tax return. The United States federal government is doing everything they can here in Congress, persuading members of Congress with every lobbyist from foreign countries and groups, trying to tell us to send $100 billion overseas, and we're doing nothing for our border. So when you want to talk about misinformation, Mr. Snyder, you might actually look a little closer to American media if you don't like what they're saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, does he have the opportunity to respond to the gentlelady?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
I didn't ask him a question,
No, her
Mr.
time's
Raskin.
expired.
You asked multiple questions.
I did not ask him a question.
You certainly did. You
Mr.
said, did you see this?
Raskin.
Yo, it's really hilarious how much Marjorie Taylor Greene hates Jamie Raskin.
Will the gentlelady yield for a question?
No, I will not yield to one of your stupid questions that are always attacking me and attacking President Trump.
How about a mediocre question?
No, I don't want to. I do not want your question.
An excellent question?
No.
A smart question?
No, my time.
An intelligent question?
You have no smart or intelligent questions.
One of the ways that we lose to authoritarian states is if they can get their claws into our leaders, either through money or compromise or psychological manipulation. I just want to show you what happens when our leaders cave in to China and to Russia. So here are some of the tweets that were sent out by the last president about President Xi in China. Smart, brilliant, everything perfect. We love each other. Friend of mine, a very, very good man. There's nobody like that. The look, the brain, the whole thing. My feeling toward you is an incredibly warm one, a brilliant man. If you went all over Hollywood to look for somebody to play the role of President Xi, you couldn't find it. There's nobody like that. The look, the brain, the whole thing. And here's the ex-president on Putin. His invasion of Ukraine is genius and pretty savvy. Putin was smart. The man has very strong control over a country, a tough cookie with great charm. So we need some democratic self-respect in order to combat the propaganda. And I am also happy that we saw today a few members actually demonstrate what propaganda running through American politicians looks like. Thank you for calling this very significant and important hearing, Mr. Chairman. I yield back to you.
See, the problem that we're having, and the reason that we're bringing up Russia as well, is because Russia is a threat as well as China. So we are not going to sit here and pretend as if it's only one or the other. But the biggest problem that we have is we have people that sit in this chamber and they spread the misinformation. If it was left in Russia or China, whatever. But the problem is that you have people that sit in positions of power and they have a $2 million budget. You think that they would call on some staff to find out if they were telling the truth about the things that they're putting on social media, but instead it works for their rhetoric.
You know, for Republicans to pretend like they're concerned about misinformation peddling is absolutely hilarious, because you have to get out a magnifying glass and try really hard to look for when they tell the truth.
I know you're a Project 2025 board member. Your recent quote from a few years ago where you said, quote, Haiti is so screwed up because it wasn't colonized long enough, end quote. Is that correct? Did you say that?
I'm happy to talk about that all you want.
You did say it, that's right?
I wrote it, yes.
You said that.
Before Kassar really turns up the heat and confronts Krikorian on why this is such a disgusting thing to believe, we can't help but be reminded of this.
Now, this follows Governor DeSantis' so-called Stop Woke Act, which forced the rewriting of education standards there in Florida. A controversial part of these new standards is instruction for middle school students to learn, quote, how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. Florida students deserve to learn how slaves took advantage of whatever circumstances they were in to benefit themselves and the community of African descendants.
You believe this is an important topic that should be taught in schools?
So that means they develop skills in spite of slavery, not because of slavery. It was them showing resourcefulness and then using those skills. If this was a different state and the governor wasn't running for president, no one would have said anything about that. There's all the gory details are in all of those standards. And we've made African-American history a priority, and we're going to continue to do that. But we are going to speak the truth, and we're going to fight back.
It's not a mistake that this false notion has gained traction within the Republican Party, only making its deployment more sinister than it already is. And Representative Kassar is about to show you exactly how to take on someone who believes this lie.
Haiti was colonized as a slave plantation colony. The French colonized Haiti so that slaves would work on plantations. The end of colonization in Haiti was so that the people there would no longer be slaves. So what you're saying, and I read your quote, and anybody watching this online should go read it. What you're saying is it would have been good if they'd stayed colonized, which means that it would have been good if they had stayed enslaved by the French.
In the long run, it's one of the
in the long run,
history. No,
people shouldn't have been enslaved a single day. I'm reclaiming my time, Chairman.
And they had every right. They had every right to throw the
What
French
you said
out.
is that
My
you would have
point
wanted
is,
them. reclaiming my time. I'm
They
talking
would
now.
have been freed
You
30
said
years later,
you said
and they would have been in the same situation.
You're saying you wanted 30 more years of slavery in Haiti, reclaiming
I
my
did
time.
not. I did
You
not.
just said
I
it.
do not
Honestly,
want that.
it adds up. You said that they would have benefited from the French influence.
In
the
the
French
long
were
run,
the ones
like the people in Martinique and
reclaiming my
Guadeloupe,
time, Mr.
who
Chairman.
were
I'd like my time
also
back. Please, Mr. Chairman,
enslaved.
my time. This is my time, Mr. Corkorian.
They are much better off.
Honestly,
now
this
than
all
Haiti
starts
was.
to add up. This all starts to add up. You continue to do this, disseminate writings of white nationalists, try to rationalize, for example, Haiti being colonized for 30 more years. You're a Project 2025 board member. In Project 2025, I couldn't figure out why on page 583, it advocates for not allowing racial disparity or gender disparity to be considered discrimination legally anymore. In Project 2025, it eliminates a 50-year-old executive order that prohibits discrimination in federal jobs. On page 586, Project 2025 advocates for Donald Trump to allow businesses to discriminate based on religious beliefs. Before today, I couldn't understand why Trump's Project 2025 could advocate for ending civil rights protections. Why would Trump's Project 2025, I know there's crazy stuff in here, but I couldn't get why it would advocate for ending protections against discrimination. But now I understand. We have Project 2025 board members here who are the directors of groups that the Southern Poverty Law Center has designated as a hate group. We have people that are on the board that developed this who have said, for example, that Haitians would have been better off with more influence from their enslavers.
In this exchange between Kassar and Krikorian, what stood out to me was how Kassar's questioning was both strategic and pointed. He didn't just engage in broad rhetoric, he zeroed in on Krikorian's claims, especially around the economic impact of immigration, and effectively dissected them. What I liked most about Kassar's approach was how he remained calm and precise, systematically revealing the contradictions in Krikorian's argument. This methodical approach made it hard for Krikorian to retreat into vague talking points, forcing a direct confrontation with the flaws in his stance. Kassar's line of questioning wasn't just about exposing Krikorian's weakness. It was also about highlighting a deeper issue with the Republican Party's position on immigration. The fact that Krikorian was brought in as their star witness here underscores how weak and out of touch the anti-immigration arguments are. Kassar demonstrated how their talking points can quickly unravel when faced with basic economic realities, leaving Republicans clinging to superficial or exaggerated claims. You know, this moment really showed the power of straightforward evidence-based questioning and breaking down ideological arguments that just don't hold up under scrutiny.
Mr. Talcove, do you know how much money a day Mr. Musk will receive from the federal government for his contracts?
No.
The answer is $8 million a day. Just last year, Elon Musk was promised $3 billion from close to 100 contracts with the federal government. Ms. Royal, do you know how much the average person in this country who survives on Social Security, one of our seniors who's worked their entire life, about how much they have to survive on a day?
I do not.
$65 a day. We're not looking into Elon Musk's $8 million a day. This subcommittee, chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene and the House Republicans, is looking into your grandmother's $65 a day. Let me be clear. I think we would all support taxpayer savings, look into money we might needlessly send to billionaires and big corporations, find taxpayer savings, and send it back to your hardworking family. But instead, what House Republicans and the Trump-Musk administration want to do is they want to look into your kids' lunch money, your kids' teacher's salary, into your grandparents' Social Security. They want to take that money and give it out in billionaire tax cuts, and they're talking about that in committee tomorrow. In Budget Committee tomorrow, they just released their plan. So let me be clear. When Republicans talk about government efficiency in this Congress, they're not looking into billionaires who don't pay their taxes. They're not looking into billionaires who get rich off of government contracts. They're not looking into Elon Musk firing watchdogs who are supposed to keep him accountable. They're looking at cutting your public schools. They're going straight for your Social Security. They're coming straight for cancer research. They're coming straight for the Department of Education. They're not looking at big tech. They're not looking at big pharma because those people fund their campaigns.